everyone. Thank you so much for joining the Rise of the Robot Security System webinar. My name is Chris Lestrino. I'm the founder and CEO of Kingscrowd, and I'm joined here today by Bill Lee, who's the founder and CEO of Knightscope. Really excited to hear from you. One housekeeping note for everyone before we start. If you do have questions, start submitting them in the Q&A section at the bottom of the webinar page, and in the last 10 minutes or so, I'll be sure to get them answered. But with that, Bill, I'd love to kind of kick it off with you, kind of giving us a 2 to 3 minute pitch on yourself, on your business, and maybe tell us a little bit about all of those robots behind you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate you having us, and I think this will be an interesting discussion. So really high level, one of the most fascinating things working on cutting edge, bleeding edge technology is looking at a really difficult problem and seeing how we can solve it. So I'm going to start there, and then we can talk a little bit about the technology. The problem we're trying to solve is crime has $1 trillion negative economic impact on the U.S. every single year. It's a hidden tax we all pay in blood, tears, and treasure. And there are 1 million law enforcement professionals and 1 million security guards trying to secure 328 million people across 50 states. And in the year 2019, we still have security guards at 3 o'clock in the morning with basically a notepad and a number 2 pencil. And that's the level of technology that we provide to them as a country. And that's just not acceptable. And so what we've been working on for the last 6 years is developing a new suite of technologies that, one, provide a physical presence, which we'll talk about in a moment, and second, gather as much data from the environment to give the security professionals and law enforcement folks really smart eyes and ears for them to do their jobs much more effectively and cover a lot more ground. So we'll talk a little bit about the physical deterrence, because there's a lot of folks that don't spend time on physical security. This may be obvious, but in a lot of cases isn't. So if I put a marked law enforcement vehicle in front of your home or your office, what happens? Right? Criminal behavior changes. Most of these criminals aren't all that bright. They're looking literally for the path of least resistance to just get away with something. You pull into a parking lot at 3 o'clock in the morning, and there's a 5-foot-tall, 400-pound machine roaming around on its own, says security on it, strobe lights blinking, you have actually no idea what it does. Like, I think you're probably going to steal the car down the street and not there. And that's literally what's been happening with our clients today. And so this is a crazy combination of self-driving technology, or same technology stack as a autonomous vehicle, robotics, and artificial intelligence. And these machines are now patrolling across the country. We're operating actually in 5 time zones now, from California all the way through to Puerto Rico, running 24/7, fully autonomous in about 15 states. And these are intended, again, to provide really smart eyes and ears for the security professionals to cover more ground at a mall, a corporate campus, a hospital, a stadium, a logistics facility, a manufacturing plant. Anywhere indoors or outdoors you might see a security guard, it's kind of fair game. And we offer our technology on a machine as a service business model, which we can get into, but that is also a unique offering for our clients. So that's kind of a high level view of what we're doing. What's kind of behind me here, I can just walk over real quick.
Yeah, please do.
So this is we have 4 products that we're working on, of which 3 of them are in production. So there's a stationary machine. If you go to Knightscope.com, you can see all of these. There's a stationary one that's a little bit taller, that's intended for ingress, egress locations. This one's the K3. It's 4 foot tall, 2 foot wide, 340 pounds, primarily for indoor applications. This is our 4th generation outdoor machine. This is the K5. We've now operated more than 700,000 hours across the country. We've learned a lot of things. And so this is an all-new machine from the ground up, and take all those lessons learned and put it into an entirely new security robot. And this is actually deploying with a client for the first time this week. And then there's still got a little bit more work to do, about probably a year's worth of work. This is the K7. This is intended to be to handle much more difficult terrain. So think of gravel, dirt, sand, 8 miles around the perimeter of an airport, a solar farm, or wind farm, et cetera, to cover much more diverse and larger environment. And all the way back there is what we call the Knightscope Network Operations Center. So we have a staff that runs 24/7 monitoring all the machines across the country, making sure that they're nice and healthy and charging and getting the maintenance and service that they require. So that's kind of the high-level quick overview. I'm sure you're going to want to unpack a lot of that, so happy to take your question.
No, absolutely. So yeah, let's start with one. This is probably the best visual we've had for a webinar yet, so thank you. Can you dig into a little bit of what that machine as a service model looks like and how that saves costs for clients and how it improves performance for clients in terms of security?
Yeah, let me answer that question actually from a client's perspective and then separately from an investor's perspective.
Terrific.
From a client's perspective, an off-duty law enforcement officer, plus or minus, and this varies widely across the country, around $85 an hour, armed. An unarmed guard, which is probably a good 95, 97% of the guards out there are unarmed. It can vary anywhere from $15 an hour up to $35 an hour, depending on what you want him or her to do and depending on the region and everything else. All these guards are contractually obligated to not intercede. And actually, I believe in 17 states, it's illegal for a security guard to put their hands on you. So basically, they're instructed to literally to observe and report only. We offer these machines, depending on which one, depending on different options, at an effective price of $6 to $12 an hour. We sign year-long contracts running 24/7. So the contracts will generate somewhere in the order of, let's say, $60,000 to about just over $100,000 running 24/7, right? You can't triple shift people, so you actually need 4 guards to cover a single post running 24/7. So it has an opportunity for a huge cost reduction, sure, while giving the security team a lot of capabilities. In some cases, some budget efficiencies as well. Now, why does an investor care? Well, the way this works is it costs us about $60,000 to build a machine, and we physically build them here in Silicon Valley with our own team in our own building, right down the hall here. Because each machine generates between $60,000 to $100,000 of revenue, the idea is to recover the cost, the bill of material cost of that machine in the first calendar year. And as an ex-Ford Motor Company executive, you'd expect me to make sure these eventually last for 5 years in service. So you recover the cost of the machine in the first year. Then the second, third, fourth, fifth year, you're basically printing money and you're providing the, obviously, support. So all the maintenance, service, unlimited software, firmware, and at times hardware upgrades. Anything goes wrong with the machine, it's on us. So obviously there's some maintenance and service and support that's required throughout that 5-year period. So we allocate about $190,000 to do that over that 5-year period. The machine costs us about 60 grand. So on the high side, just to make the numbers round, each machine should generate about $500,000 of revenue over that 5-year period. And then we should net out about $250,000 of actual profit per machine over that 5-year period. And so another way to think about it is you're almost building an annuity or something annuity-like. Sure. Back from Detroit, you're looking at luxury automotive per unit economics, meaning you're kind of buying a Mercedes-Benz or a Tesla every year, but it's on a service model, so you've got software as a service kind of margins.
So going to, it saves costs and it should help you keep better eyes and ears on whatever facility they're protecting. So when you go to sell this product, when you hear things like that, for me, it's always, well, why isn't it in every mall already? Why isn't it in every corporate center already? What are the challenges in selling this product and convincing people that there's a value add here by utilizing this tech instead of just having traditional security guards?
Well, the first few years, I'll say it's complete disbelief because it kind of looks like the thing off the movie screen is now literally operating there. So that's the first thing. Second, the security industry is a bit antiquated and not the biggest proponent of technology. There's pockets in places, but overall, there's not a big adoption of technology. It's extremely fragmented. There's 8,000 private security firms and 19,000 law enforcement agencies. So it's not like there's one decision maker, like maybe at the Department of Defense. And we needed time to actually build the technology. So we actually have probably 400 machines in the sales pipeline, not backlog, that we're working on. And the other is a little bit societal, or if you show up at a corporate campus and the chief security officer wants to change the cameras in the building, Like that's not a board discussion. That's a CEO discussion. No one else is pretty much involved. He or
Right.
she will just do it, right? In our case, we show up with the robot, and I'm not saying this in jest. 50 people come down, want to see the robot. The marketing people wanting to talk about branding. The PR people want to talk about, how do we communicate this? The HR people, how do we communicate this to the employees? The facilities people want to get involved. Then the IT people, and then the cybersecurity team, then the finance, purchasing, legal. And in a lot of cases, believe it or not, it's gone all the way up to the CEO and the board.
Oh, wow.
So I think because the technology is so new, and then maybe half jokingly, the Hollywood has done us a service and disservice over the last 30 years, where there's a lot of science fiction, emphasis on fiction. We get quoted all kinds of movies and that sort of thing, that the robots are here to come and kill us. They're going to take all our jobs. And, that's actually not the case. We seem to have this societal episode every 15 years or so. Could you imagine when the first time electricity went online? That's obviously got to be the work of the devil, right? I've seen people get killed with this stuff. Like, we need to be careful with this. Or you're never going to see a banker ever again. All these ATM machines, they're going to take all the jobs away, right? And it just there's examples along the way. But now people are realizing that, this actually works. So if you go on our website, if you go to Knightscope.com and just hit the crime button, you can see all the crime fighting wins we've had. We've actually helped a law enforcement agency issue an arrest warrant for a sexual predator. We helped another law enforcement agency apprehend an armed gunman. We helped a security guard apprehend a thief. We caught a corporate vandal. Like, the list goes on. And now what people start realizing, like, hey, we have one client, as for an example, was experiencing 1 to 2 criminal incidents a week. This is at a hospital running. So they had, assault, theft, stolen vehicle, literally every week, once or twice. And you imagine being the doctor or the nurse, you leave your shift at 2 o'clock in the morning. Now you have to go through the minefield to get to your car. And the guard is not willing to patrol because it's gotten that dangerous. And now the machine's been patrolling there for, I believe, 1.5 years, and all the incidents have literally gone down to 0. So when you've got, actual wins like that, it makes a difference. And I think it's also fascinating that a lot of officers and guards, like 97, 98% of the time, there's not much going on.
Sure.
Right? But when something happens, it's kind of really important to be well prepared. And this provides unprecedented, situational awareness for the security professionals to, again, do their jobs much, much more effectively.
So tell us a little bit about what those early clients and early adopters have looked like. In terms of what's their profile, what are the companies and why are they adopting it?
So the ones that I can name, because in a lot of cases, the security professionals want to keep, their security program confidential. But in no particular order, malls, kind of like Westfield in California and New Jersey. XPO Logistics is a $15 billion NYSE listed company. Sure. We're now in 3 of their several hundred facilities in the U.S. A lot of corporate campuses like a Samsung or a financial institution like a Citizens Bank. You've got the residential in New York and Georgia. In Denver, we're going up and down a 9-story parking structure, so you got a lot of commercial property kind of owners. Casino, we're doing really well with our friends over in at Pechanga. It's one of the largest casinos, I believe, west of the Mississippi. They soon will have 6 machines at one location, which is a big deal. And then you've got some corporates that are starting to scale. I can't name the company, but with one major high-tech manufacturer, we're operating and under contract with 9 machines in 5 locations in 3 states. So things are starting to pick up, and that's why we're raising this additional growth capital so we can do a little bit more of a rinse and repeat.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you about that. For your current clients, have any up their programs, and typically what's the conversation? Is that they're seeing, good enough results where they're like, oh, we need more machines because this is really helping us? What does that look like?
So what I like to say, especially to the founders in the audience, it's really easy to build a demo. It's kind of easy to build a prototype. You might get lucky and sell one or two, but if you can get a client to work with you, pay you full price, work with you for a full year, and then renew the contract and add more machines, then you've got something. And that's kind of where we're at with a lot of clients. The Sacramento Kings, they're a client of ours. Nice. We love the team. They've renewed a couple of times, which is great. But there aren't 300 Sacramento Kings stadiums across the U.S., right? So that's a different profile of a client than, back to XPO Logistics, maybe a less well-known brand. They compete against DHL and UPS and FedEx, but they've got several hundred facilities, and we know that we can genuinely help them. So that's where we get super excited. And then for some clients, we've continued to work very closely, and we have a very open chief security officer to innovation. So for example, at Pechanga, we just released facial recognition capability, working with them in beta mode for them to kind of experience what we are capable of doing. How does it actually help them? And so then now they can kind of keep track of, hey, I think I threw that guy out last night, and that one was counting cards or whatever the issue might be. And then also the opposite is, hey, VIP just arrived. Can we get, guest services to support? And that's going to be really interesting, I think, once we get to, we've signed our first couple of institutions of higher learning. But when we get into the kind of more traditional schools, it's going to be interesting how you apply this technology. Can you treat a school as if it was a data center? So think of it as this place should be quote unquote sterile, meaning only the faculty, only the parents, and only the kids are allowed here. So if you see any license plate, any mobile device, or any particular person that's not registered to be here, then send the alert. Right? Yeah. There's a lot of interesting ways to really start thinking about this, and then always having that real-time approach. A lot of people focus a lot on the machines and the shiny object, but the magic secret sauce is actually the browser-based user interface that we provide our clients. The machines generate 90 terabytes of data a year. There's no way a human's going to be able to process all that. So our team spends a lot of time on the machine learning, deep learning, and user interface kind of aspects to make sure that the clients have access to the live streaming data, and as well as be able to do a lot of investigations and forensics with a tool that they can access either on a desktop, tablet, or mobile. So you could be anywhere in the world and kind of see live at eye level 360-degree video of what's going on literally right now, which is super powerful for our clients.
Yeah, can you tell us a bit more about that, the AI technology that you've built into these things? What is it capable of doing? How does it help with things like identifying the moment that there's a criminal or whatever it may be? How does that work? Just a top-level understanding of how that works.
So high level, what we want to do, and then kind of where we're at right now. High level, what we want to do is have the machines over the long term be able to see, feel, hear, and smell. And what we're able to do today is, I'll give you a few examples. Let's say you're a commercial property owner. Between 10 o'clock at night and 5 in the morning, there should be 0 people waltzing around your property. If you see a person, not the person, a person, you need to send an alert. And that alert can be on the user interface, can be an email, a text, or a phone call. So that's one. So people detection. Second, you can run a thermal scan of the environment and just say, hey, for this particular area, we should be seeing nothing over 372 degrees. If you see something over that, I need to know. Third, we can read 1,200 license plates a minute. So a few interesting things. If we're working with law enforcement, we have access to the NCIC database, then we can tell you that plate's tied to a felon, stolen car, stolen plate, or sexual offender. If we're not working with law enforcement, then we can work with the client and say, hey, that vehicle's been parked there for 27 hours. Your corporate policy is not to allow anyone to leave a vehicle overnight. That'll trigger an alert. Or here are the top 10 that have been here. Or let's say you terminated an employee and you're worried they're going to come back. You can actually blacklist that license plate, and you can also blacklist their mobile device. And if we ever see either of those things, that alert goes directly to the security team. And then on the facial recognition item that we just discussed, the kind of same concept, that you could end up whitelisting or blacklisting a person of interest. And despite all the hubbub about AI and everything else, you really want to think about this as new tools for the teams to do their jobs more effectively. We're not intruding on anyone's privacy. Primarily, we're in public, so the concept of privacy kind of doesn't really work. But these are, again, really smart tools. The thing that I get rather animated about is we've got a Department of Defense that provides a $700 billion budget to support all the troops outside the U.S. and in the U.S. with every level of capability you might ever imagine, right? So there's a Northrop Grumman, a Lockheed Martin, a Boeing, a Raytheon to build you whatever submarine, jet fighter, tank you want with the latest and greatest, right? What I've got a problem with is the U.S. Department of Justice and the U.S. Department of Homeland Security have no federal jurisdiction over 19,000 law enforcement agencies and 8,000 private security firms, right? There's literally no one in charge. There's no dedicated budget. There's no risk capital that goes in here. There's no process. There's no major corporation supporting the public and private sector. And it's kind of the wild, wild west, which is terrible from the state of affairs. Like, I don't think our founders of our country ever expected us to, when you go to the movies, you go to a place of worship, or you go to a school, you have literally a risk of being shot or killed. Like, that's not acceptable. So when that happens, tell me, who gets fired? No one, because no one's accountable. It's, literally with this hand gesture, we extend our thoughts and prayers. Well, hey, listen, that's actually not going to solve the problem, and you're not structurally set up to fix the problem. So we've got the honor and privilege of getting up every morning here in Silicon Valley and actually trying to address the awful issues that continue to happen in our society.
That's really interesting. So question from the crowd is, when things go wrong, when the robot falls over, when...
What? Nothing goes wrong. No. Everything's smooth.
How does Knightscope handle those situations? What happens? How does that impact the client, et cetera?
So one concept that's really important is, again, back to the founders you cannot develop this technology in a laboratory somewhere. You have to be out in the field, and you're never going to, we've probably forgotten more in this building than most people would know how to do this. And it's because we're operating through the rain, through the snow, through multiple seasons, sunrise, sunset, fog, rain, people, kids, trucks, you name it. And if you don't have that experience, it's going to be really difficult. When things do, how many accidents do you think occur every day in, let's say, the automotive?
Oh man, I have no idea. A very large number.
So would you agree that it's a mature industry?
Yeah.
Like, it's over 100 years old. Okay. So a mature industry, over 100 years old. It's kind of shocking to me that there's over 15,000 accidents that occur every day.
Wow.
Knightscope is 6 years old. We're at the cutting edge of bleeding edge of technology. We've had 3 minor incidents, and there'll continue to be more. And I try to make sure our underwriters, insurance folks, the risk management people, our attorneys, our investors, everyone knows there will be more incidents. Most importantly is how you conduct yourself and how you handle when something does go wrong. One, obviously, make sure everything's safe. Second, be transparent. So we actually issue incident reports when something does happen. And third, put in the corrective actions and just make sure that that doesn't, kind of happen again. And that's a continual process. And how we conduct ourselves is really important moving forward, and how we have done and track record of doing so.
So another question that we got from the crowd is, in the event where, something happens, you see a burglar stealing something, whatever it may be, how can the robot kind of jump in and help in that situation? They don't have arms, so what do they do?
So the premise of the question is a little bit flawed, because as I mentioned earlier, across all 50 states, the U.S. is the most litigious society in the world, right? I think it's some outrageous number, like 90% of the lawsuits originate in the U.S. So all the guarding companies have basically contractually obligated themselves to only observe and report. So this concept that you see on TV of the security guard chasing that's actually not reality.
Doesn't happen.
They are not to intercede. And as I mentioned earlier, I believe it's 17 states, it's illegal for them to actually intercede. So that doesn't actually happen. The third concept we want to kind of think about is some folks are like, well, you should put a gun on it, or you should put a taser on it. And that's a big red line for us. We've been asked to do that. We're not doing that. And one of the reasons is if you're trying to build a new set of technologies for society to trust, right, and in an unbiased format, the last thing you need to be doing is tasing someone. Maybe on a more humorous note, I don't have any team members or engineers here that would be interested in being the test dummies to make sure the stuff works, right? So we're just not doing that. Today, the guards observe and report, and that's exactly what we do. So we don't intercede, and the technology is not designed to intercede. It's the most powerful combination. It's humans plus hardware plus software. And you need to let the humans do what they're really good at, and you need to have the machines do the monotonous, computationally heavy stuff that no human could ever possibly do. And if we can promote all the security guards and all the law enforcement professionals and have these machines basically working for them, that is a much better solution than saying, I'm going to go put arms on this thing and a gun and see how we can literally take science fiction into society and have some sort of crazy Terminator RoboCop thing.
Sure.
It's funny to talk about and stuff, but our clients are dealing with real world problems. We need serious people working on serious problems, and that's what we've been doing.
Would you ever license the autonomous technology that you built for other vehicles?
No. How do I say this? So we have a K1 that's stationary. There's a K3 for indoors. There's a K5 for outdoors. There's a K7 behind me for multi-terrain. The machines likely will end up getting larger and larger. And as an ex-automotive executive, you would think if we can do a crawl, walk, run approach, where we ourselves would be potentially building much larger machines to cover a lot more different ground, would be the best use of our technology for our particular use case. I think one of the really interesting things is, depending on how you want to do the math, I believe $40 to $80 billion has been invested in self-driving autonomous technology. There's 50 to 200 companies working on it. I believe Knightscope is literally the only company in the world operating 24/7 across an entire nation, fully autonomous without any human intervention. That's not only a technical feat, but is a statement, I believe, of fact. Everyone else is working on R&D projects, very large R&D projects, don't have actual customers, no revenue or anything, and they are valued in the $500 million to $2 billion range.
Right.
Meanwhile, we've got this technology actually commercialized with real clients and real revenue, and for us to be licensing stuff out is not a plan for us.
Makes a lot of sense. And last question for you here before we wrap up. As you think about the business 3 to 5 years down the road, where do you see Knightscope? What's your kind of grand vision?
So 3 to 5 years doesn't deliver a grand vision. So if I can give you a multi-decade answer.
Please.
Our slightly ambitious goal is to see if we can make the United States of America the safest country in the world. So pause for a moment and let the founder just pause reality and just say, let's say they're able to actually do that. Talk to me about the impact on insurance rates. Talk to me about the impact on housing prices, on municipalities' budgets, the volatility of financial markets, the safety of your family. Like literally everything changes for everyone. And when we started the company in 2013, I was told the following: hey, Bill, you're out of your mind. This will never work. It's too complicated. You need $15 million to build the first one and it won't work. It's hardware and software. You should pick one. And lastly, physical security is not an investment thesis, and you need to go away. And now we sit here, we have raised over $40 million. We're backed by 6,000 investors across the country in 4 major corporations. We've got renewing clients. We're operating in 15 states across 5 time zones. I think probably it'd be a good idea for those that want to have a more positive outlook to join us and be a force for good. You can literally go to knightscope.com, click the invest button, and you can actually buy shares in what we hope to be our pre-IPO offering, and make sure that we have the capital to continue to grow the technology. And now that we have a track record of doing so, we're extremely grateful for all the investors that have backed us to date. And there is a lot more technology to be built in order to achieve that long-term, slightly crazy ambition, but we're on track.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much, Bill. It's been a pleasure chatting with you today. Really excited about the technology you're building. And yeah, I think you're onto a bright future. So for all of those that are on the webinar, thanks for joining. And hopefully this has helped you make a decision on investing. And have a wonderful day.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Take care now. Bye.
Bye-bye.